It is now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honorable Rob Bonta, Attorney General of California. Sworn in on April 23, 2021, Attorney General Bonta is the 34th person and the first Filipino-American to hold this office. Born in Quezon City in the Philippines and raised in California, he grew up in a family deeply committed to service and social justice. That foundation has guided his career in law and in public service. Before his appointment as Attorney General, he represented the 18th District in the California State Assembly, where he authored and championed legislation on criminal justice reform, healthcare, and immigrant rights. Throughout his career, he has consistently focused on equity and opportunity for underserved communities. Since taking office, Attorney General Bonta has brought that same commitment to environmental protection and climate leadership. He has led California's effort to defend and advance clean car and clean energy standards. He's taken strong enforcement action against corporate polluters and worked to ensure that environmental justice is a priority in statewide climate policy. His leadership reflects California's role as both a national and global model, demonstrating that ambitious climate action can go hand in hand with equity and justice. We are deeply honored to have him here with us today. So please join me in welcoming the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta.
Well, thank you, Dean, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here at the Columbia Climate School, and looking forward to our conversation and your questions. I'm happy to make a few remarks, and of course, leave it to me to come from California to tell a number of New Yorkers in New York about the California story. I do definitely believe that in that adage, as California goes, so goes the nation. I'm proud and grateful for our climate leadership, and California has always seen and continues to see New York as a critical, essential partner in our work. We feel connected and committed to the same goals and values. And a quick story, when I became Attorney General, I had the honor of being appointed AG back in 2021. The great Attorney General from the great state of New York, Letitia James, reached out to me and welcomed me to the new role, and let me know that her view was that California and New York were bookends, fighting for justice, fighting for our collective values, and she hoped that we would continue to have that relationship. And of course, I reaffirmed and committed wholeheartedly to that important work. So grateful for the great work of New York, hand in hand with California, to advance our climate goals and to take climate action. Of course, much more to do, and a difficult environment when it comes to the federal government, who unfortunately is withdrawing from some of the historical roles and positions that the federal government has taken to use facts, to rely on science, to confront the realities of climate change and take appropriate action. So that means that our states and others, NGOs, corporations, all of us have a role. Activists need to do more in this moment if we're going to meet the moment and meet the threat of climate change, the speed, the scope, the scale of it, with solutions that match that scope and scale and speed. So looking forward to talking a little bit about the work that we've done in the Attorney General's role, and then I know there's some interest in the broader California story as well. But I just want to step back for a second and say that service is something that has been passed down to me from my parents as two role models of mine who were very dedicated social justice advocates and activists. I had a dad who was involved in the civil rights movement, who went to Selma, Alabama in the 1960s and organized for civil rights and voting rights. I had both parents worked for the United Farm Workers of America and brought me to the headquarters of La Paz as a young boy, and organized with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, fighting for a fair contract for workers who are feeding our state and feeding our nation. Also, my mom is a as an immigrant from the Philippines. She came to the United States for the first time in her late 20s when she got a scholarship to go to grad school, and she took a ship for 3 weeks to come to Berkeley, California. That's where she met my dad. And they got married and moved back to the Philippines as missionaries in service to others. And that's when I joined the family, and I was born. And shortly after I was born, my parents, living in the Philippines at the time, wondered out loud if they could raise me in the Philippines and ensure that I had democracy and freedom, the rule of law, due process, human rights, the things they really weren't willing to negotiate when it came to my future. And their answer was, unfortunately, no, that those things were under threat, that they were at risk of being taken away, and they decided to bring me to California. They were right. About exactly a year from the date of my birth, martial law was declared in the Philippines. The Ferdinand Marcos dictatorship took over. Free and fair elections were over. Political opponents who dared to speak out against the lack of democracy and the lack of human rights were often arrested and imprisoned, tortured, and killed. And so my parents brought me to California, hoping for me what so many around the world over many decades have wanted for themselves and for their families. They wanted an opportunity and a better life. And they thought that I could have an opportunity to realize my California dream if they brought me to, and my American dream and my full potential if they brought me here to the United States. And they were right. I'll just say that my dream has always been to serve, to help others, to make lives better, to tackle problems, to deliver solutions. And I never thought I would be in this role as California Attorney General. I'm grateful every day for this opportunity, this privilege to serve and to fight and to advance the values of California and to use the law as what I believe it's supposed to be used for and is used for, as a force for good to make people's lives better. And so that has been the approach that I've taken to this work. And I mentioned how my parents were activists, and I often, as a boy, saw them talk to people who were not everyday people like them. And by the way, everyday people, along with other everyday people, doing extraordinary things as a collective, as a movement. But they would also reach out to people with official, positional authority, people with public office, people in elected office, and ask them to side with them, to see the situation that they saw, to see the injustice that they observed, and to help them solve the problem and to fight by their side and have their back. And I remember that my mom would often be saddened and disappointed to hear that the elected officials weren't interested and wouldn't take their side and wouldn't prioritize what they were working on. And so my mom has shared a story with me that I, as a young boy, told her that when I grew up, I was going to side with the people and make their fights my fights and listen to the people. And that's something I've always hoped to do. I think it's built in, it's inherent in the role in elected office. My bosses are the people who've elected me and my constituents. My goal is to fight for them, to listen to them, to be by their side and tackle the issues, make their fights my fights. And right now, folks are very interested in making sure that we have a democracy, the rule of law, rights, freedoms, protections. And those things are under threat, unfortunately, from our own federal government. And I say that certainly with someone who's got a passionate position on this. I also say it as someone who has gone to court multiple times, and our position has been absolutely affirmed by the courts in our cases. We have sued the federal administration 35 times in 39 times, in 35 weeks, more than once a week since the administration has come to power. And that wasn't our plan, that wasn't our goal, that wasn't our hope. Our hope was to never have to sue the federal administration, because that would mean that they're following the law. That would mean that they're complying with the Constitution. I don't think it's a lot to ask, in my humble opinion, that the President of the United States follow the law, that the President of the United States comply with the Constitution. And it is absolutely true that elections matter, that elections have consequences. It is true that President Trump won the presidential election. He can advance his agenda lawfully. And you wouldn't think we have to say it, but I have to say it. The lawfully is a very important modifier here. And sometimes this administration acts as if the law is an inconvenience that gets in the way of them advancing their agenda, as opposed to what it is, immovable guardrails that we all must follow that apply to everyone. And the rule of law applies to everyone. Everyday folks in California and New York, the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, and everyone in between. That's what it means to have the rule of law. We have the rule of law, not the rule of man. That's what we've chosen for this nation to be built on. And we believe, I believe, and when I say we, I mean Democratic Attorneys General, A.G. James and I, the 23 Attorneys General that are Democratic, we believe that enforcing the rule of law, standing up for the rule of law, going to court to make sure the law is followed and the Constitution is complied with is absolutely critical in this moment. And of those 39 cases that we brought in 35 weeks, we have often gone to court with urgency, seeking restraining orders where we believe that if we don't get a court order soon, within days, sometimes within hours, we will suffer irreparable harm. And the court determines whether we should get that order. They determine if the irreparable harm is actually present, and they also, the risk of irreparable harm. And they also ask, are you likely to win this case? They call it, are you likely to succeed on the merits? And out of 23 times when we have gone in seeking a restraining order on that basis and a court has ruled, we've won 21 times. So we've got the order 21 out of 23 times. Almost run the table, over 90% of the time, winning in court when the judge has been asked if we're going to win this case and if we have suffered irreparable harm. So we are right in these cases. We are prevailing in these cases. The rule of law is alive and well. Courts are a place where you can continue to bring the facts, apply the law, and get court orders that ensure compliance with the law. And we've been doing that multiple times with the Trump administration. And it's looked like a lot of different things when it comes to climate. There's been really significant impacts on the work of California to be able to continue the nation-leading, global-leading progress that we've pioneered when it comes to ensuring we have clean air and clean water, and that we invest in sustainability and clean energy and green approaches. And we were able to protect, in one of our earliest cases, over $168 billion worth of funding that the Trump administration saw that the Congress, a co-equal and separate branch of government, had appropriated to California and thought that they could block it and wanted that money to be withheld and to not flow to California. That involved a lot of different types of funding sources. It covered a lot of ground like healthcare and housing and food, but it also included critical investments in transportation, in clean energy, in clean water, in clean air, most of it coming through the Infrastructure Act and also the Inflation Reduction Act. And we were able, by going to court and saying that Congress has the decisions has the power of the purse and decides around appropriations, that makes decisions about appropriations. We were able to prevail in that case and make sure that that critical funding flowed to California. And that's been a approach that the Trump administration has taken multiple times, where the Trump administration just fiercely covets the authority of Congress, Congress's power of the purse, Congress's power to appropriate. And they want that power, and they try to exercise it unilaterally in violation of the law. We've gone to court multiple times to block them from that unlawful and unconstitutional maneuver. We've also, our blocks, our wins in court have extended to Trump's attempts to withhold critical electric vehicle infrastructure funding for California and to other states across the country. It also has applied to their attempts to withhold FEMA funding that is supposed to be invested in pre-disaster mitigation efforts to harden and prepare and ready different parts of the state and the nation for the threat of wildfire or flood or earthquake. And we've ensured that that money is actually put on the street and flows to California, consistent with the will and the desire of Congress. California, as you may know, has some of the strictest vehicle emission standards, our clean car standards and our clean car waivers in the nation. Other states have followed our lead, and Trump has attacked those waivers and attacked those standards. And we've gone to court to fight back as well. We've also gone to court to fight back against the attacks on offshore wind power, and we are hoping to secure victories in those cases as well. That's sort of an overview of some of our critical litigation as it impacts the environmental space and the climate space. We've also filed multiple amicus briefs in other cases where California doesn't necessarily have standing, but we support the issue. We've supported nonprofit organizations and NGOs who do have standing, who've gone to court, and we believe that that alliance, that coalition is really important. We appreciate and support others who are standing up for their rights when they're violated, who are standing up for the rule of law. And though we might not have standing, which means that we've suffered an injury, we can go to court to remedy it. We support others who stand up for their rights and stand up for the rule of law in these other cases. We continue to do everything now that we were doing prior to the Trump administration took office, plus the work that we're doing vis-a-vis the Trump administration. And when it comes to climate action, we brought two major cases over the last 2 years to plant our flag in the ground and to take on what we have seen as unlawful deception by fossil fuel companies when it comes to climate change deception, as well as deception perpetuating the myth of plastic recycling. 2 years ago, while we were at Climate Week in New York, the governor of California and I, on behalf of the state of California, announced our lawsuit against some of the biggest fossil fuel companies, Shell and Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil, as well as the American Petroleum Institute, for engaging for decades, continuing to today, in climate change deception, knowing about climate change, knowing about the extreme weather it would cause, knowing of the impacts since as far back as the 60s, and lying about it, deceiving the public about it, because it would be bad for business if people knew that their product that they were consuming was causing climate change. And we have the receipts. We had a very lengthy, thorough complaint that set forth chapter and verse all of the different actions that these companies engaged in, from their internal recognition, their conversations with themselves, their emails and internal speeches where they acknowledged climate change and the causal relationship of fossil fuels to climate change, but also acknowledged that that would be a problem for their business model, and then externally to the public said the opposite. There's one study that shows that 80% plus of the communications internally acknowledge climate change caused by fossil fuels, and then 80% plus of the communications externally deny climate change or cast doubt on climate change caused by fossil fuels. And this is a very sophisticated public communications endeavor where advertorials launched or placed in newspapers and industry commissioned studies and front groups with green-sounding names were all deployed to perpetuate the lie and the deception around climate change. Greenwashing continues this day by these companies. The claim that their fossil fuel products are somehow clean and green and sustainable and carbon neutral. And we believe that the people of California and the people of this country do not deserve to be lied to. You shouldn't be lied to. You should be told the truth. And once the truth is told, you can decide what you want to consume and how you want to behave and what you want to demand from your policymakers. But not only do we think you shouldn't be lied to, it is unlawful to deceive the public as businesses in the ways that they have, and so we've sued them. Our main cause of action is a public nuisance cause of action, which connected to it has a remedy of an abatement fund, which we hope to secure in this case, where the defendants, the fossil fuel companies, will put very large sums of money into this abatement fund to abate and mitigate the adverse impacts of their climate change deception. It could be, you could fund a campaign around telling the truth about the impact of fossil fuels on climate change. It could also address some of the challenges that we've seen. These are all exemplary, not necessarily things that we have decided we're going to ask for at this point, but to help people understand what an abatement fund might look like. It could include forest management funds to help address wildfires. It could address drought by having money set aside for water storage or water distribution. It could address sea rise by having infrastructure investments to guard against sea rise. It could have funding for clean air centers or cooling centers. So there's a whole variety of different options, but the abatement fund, we think, is the biggest remedy. There's also disgorgement of profits that flowed from the lying, and we're excited about our case. We joined a case in California with other political subdivisions, and when we joined places like Oakland and San Francisco in that lawsuit, we became the largest geographic entity and largest economic entity to bring a lawsuit of this kind. There are also similar lawsuits across the country brought by other states and other public entities, which we appreciate that they have brought those suits independently from ours, and believe that as many entities that want to get involved in this space should. We encourage participation in calling out the deception and holding these fossil fuel companies accountable. A year later, we brought our case against ExxonMobil, the biggest provider of the building blocks of plastics. And they had, for years, perpetuated the myth of plastic recycling. The chasing arrows, they pointed to and said, we can have a consumer economy. You can use as much plastic as you like. You can just throw it in the right recycling bin. You're doing your job. You're responsible. You're a good environmental steward. When they knew that the vast majority of plastics are never recycled, never circularly recycled and come back as another type of plastic product in your household or that you use. And most plastic goes to landfill, is incinerated, or we find in our environment, our rivers, our streams, our oceans. And they knew this, ExxonMobil knew this, and they perpetuated this myth so that they could sell ever more plastics to more American consumers. And we believe it's wrong to lie. We know it's illegal to use deceptive practices like this, and so we are holding them accountable by our lawsuit as well. So those are two of our major lawsuits that we've brought in the last couple of years. We also have a major lawsuit that we brought tackling forever chemicals, PFAS, as you know it. And we believe that it's important to take big swings here that are supported by the law and by the facts, but to be aggressive in holding the unlawful actors accountable for their conduct. And so litigation takes time. We are in the early stages of this litigation. These are multi-year litigations, unfortunately. Sometimes in cases involving irreparable harm, as I discussed earlier, and a request for emergency orders, litigation can be fast. We can get an order within hours, and we have in some of our cases against the Trump administration. Sometimes it takes longer to get to the end, to get to a final judgment, and we expect that these cases against the fossil fuel companies will take a number of different years, but we believe it's a critical path that through litigation we can hold the bad actors, the unlawful actors accountable, but we also know that we're not the only path. We're grateful for policymakers who are tackling policy issues and delivering solutions through legislation, federally, not so much federally, unfortunately, but also in states, and activists who continue to do the important work, NGOs who do the important work. Litigation is one tool in the toolbox, but I will respectfully submit that right now is a time to use all tools in the toolbox. As you're tackling climate change and engaging in climate action, there's essentially no such thing as doing too much. We all need to be acting urgently, passionately, understanding the speed, scope, and scale of the problem, and meeting it with solutions that address that speed, scope, and scale. So I just want to end with this. I want to answer your questions. Now is an important moment I know it's a time of concern, anxiety, maybe sadness, maybe even fear. And I understand all those feelings. And I also know that it's a time when some people feel overwhelmed by all the actions that the federal administration is tackling, not just in the climate space, but in the different spaces, the deployment of military into American cities, shutting down or having certain comedians be taken off the air in seeming violation of the First Amendment. And that's just recently. And sometimes people want to turn away from what we're seeing because it's too much, want to turn off the television because we've had enough of the bad news. And I understand that too. I'll say that when you turn off the TV or turn away, the problems don't go away. They're still there. And we need people like all of you to confront those challenges and tackle them and help resolve them. And I want you all to know that while sometimes you might feel hopeless, you shouldn't feel hopeless because you're not helpless. You have power, you have agency, you have the ability to create change. This is a government of, for, and by the people. The people will have the last word on this. There is many more chapters to be written in the story of New York, in the story of California, and the story of America. And you and I and us and we're going to write it together. The people will write it. And so I have no doubt that this is a challenging time. I also have no doubt that we will prevail if we continue to fight, if we stand up, if we commit to our values, if we call out injustice, if we don't let our rights be trampled on, if we take this administration to court when it violates the law so our rights can be vindicated. But if we are silenced, if we are apathetic, if we are neglectful to our democracy, that's where danger lurks. So stay active. Democracy thrives on participation and activism, on doing. It relies on the power of the people. People power is the most potent power that there is. So I'll be using the courts, I know some of you will, to seek justice and achieve change. We need people to use people power by showing up in crowds and voicing their views and demanding change and articulating what's unacceptable. And we need people finally to have courage, to not be silenced, to not be bullied, to not be intimidated, to not capitulate when threatened, to not acquiesce, but to fight for our values, for our principles, for our rights, for our democracy, for the rule of law. If we fight, I'm confident that we will win, but we must fight. And I know that the folks in this room will be part of that fight. I'm proud to fight beside you, for you, and with you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney General. Very inspiring. I'm going to start with the first question, and we're going to open it up. And I know we've got some eager folks here. There will be a microphone going around, so we want to make sure everybody gets heard. So you can raise your hand, and someone will get to you with a microphone. You had some very inspirational things, some good advice for our students in particular, for all of us that are sort of struggling at this time. I was hoping maybe you could give an example of, you gave some wonderful examples of some cases that you're fighting currently. Maybe an example of some cases that happened in the past that you see the benefits of now and can talk through sort of what those look like in the state of California right now.
Well, thank you. So obviously this is Trump 2.0. There was a Trump 1.0 in 2016 to 2020. And in that time, there was, I call it the rise of the AGs. The attorney generals rose up and took action, banded together, Democratic AGs. Unfortunately, it wasn't bipartisan, although protecting democracy, the rule of law should not be partisan. And there were really important lawsuits that were brought then. And those lawsuits delivered results. Some of the lawsuits were brought by our office in coalition with others and argued at the highest levels, the U.S. Supreme Court, by our office. One was defending the Affordable Care Act and making sure that millions of people could access high-quality, affordable health care through the Affordable Care Act. Our Solicitor General in the California Department of Justice, Mike Mongan, argued the case and appeared before the 9 Supreme Court justices and argued why this is legal and should continue to have impact. And we prevailed in that case. So millions of people continue to have high-quality, affordable health care through the ACA that were at risk of losing it. We also defended at the U.S. Supreme Court deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. And our office argued that as well, and we were able to protect DACA. There was a case that kept the citizenship question, if you recall, from being on the U.S. Census that would have chilled participation and gotten inaccurate counts. A lot of the cases were environmental that we brought back in Trump 1.0, including environmental cases challenging the building of the wall, which we were able to prevent that, the building that we were challenging through the entirety of the Trump administration, and then we were able to resolve that case amicably with the Biden administration. So those are all examples where you can look back and see front to finish a lawsuit being brought, results being achieved, something important that was at risk being protected, and we're at the beginning stages of that process now with some of our lawsuits being launched, but we have early victories. Again, those 21 restraining orders we've already secured, and we've also had complete victories. In one of our cases where billions of dollars of critical education funding was being threatened to be withheld by the Trump administration, we sued the Trump administration in court. We laid out all of our legal arguments. The Trump administration waved the white flag, threw in the towel, and said, "Okay, we're going to give you all the funding. We're going to send all the funding that we were threatening to withhold to the states, billions of dollars that supported classrooms and students and teachers and parents." So even now, we're seeing some of the impacts and effects of the cases.
No, that's great. And for those of us, right, really focused on climate action, it's great to sort of see some of the evidence of the environmental impact side, and really the climate action is so tied to equitable, making sure that we're thinking about equality, equity, justice, and frontline communities and impacting them in positive ways. So thank you for all of that work. Let's see, let's open it up for a couple of questions. You've got, sure?
You talked about the restraining orders. Are you seeing compliance when a judge orders something to be done? Is it being done? And do you have concerns that going forward that you may win in the court side, but you may not be seeing compliance from the executive side?
The short answer is absolutely, we are seeing compliance in our cases. And I know there's a growing belief that court orders don't matter, that even if you win a court order, they're not being followed. Absolutely not true in our cases. I don't think our cases are the only cases that have been brought. I also believe that there has been foot dragging or lack of compliance to different degrees in other cases. But in our 39 cases, we have seen compliance. And we had one case I referred to earlier where we won a sweeping order involving $3 trillion worth of funding that covered many different funding sources. And there was an argument that we had with the Trump administration about whether Inflation Reduction Act funding and Infrastructure Act funding was covered by the sweeping order. We argued it was covered and that money needs to flow. They argued it didn't. And so we moved to enforce our order when they didn't comply with it. And we argued before the judge, we prevailed, we won, and the Trump administration then complied with the order. So it was good to see that. We often catch wind of the fact that memos are being sent by the U.S. Department of Justice following a loss in our cases where they are providing details about the court's order, instructions to the appropriate department or agency in the federal government about what they're required to do. That's what should be happening. That's an important step for an attorney to take to make sure that their client complies with the court order. So in our cases, we're seeing it. But I've also seen J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance's statements about the courts aren't supposed to tell a general how to run their military, or Speaker Johnson saying we need some of these courts to stand down, or Trump when he sees a court order that he doesn't like talking about impeachment and so-called judges. There's no such thing as so-called judges. There's judges. and so, but they're trying to socialize a undercutting of the courts, which is very, very dangerous. Again, another co-equal branch of government that seems to be an inconvenience to the Trump administration because they keep getting slapped down by court orders when judges are doing their role. And I've seen like Stephen Miller is complaining about all the court orders against the Trump administration, and I have a pro tip, which is if you don't break the law, you don't get court orders against you. So comply with the law, and you'll see less court order. You'll see no court orders against you.
Thank you for your persistence. Let's go over here. And then I want to, go ahead.
Yes, I'm a professor here at Columbia University, but I grew up in the Central Valley in California and spent a lot of time farming and working on farms. And I don't think many people realize how essential California agriculture is for feeding the rest of the country. And part of that is really related to water. And water is the lifeblood of agriculture. And obviously climate is going to have an effect on that. So given the potential issues associated with water scarcity, and given what I know about riparian law, which is to say that riparian law is, for lack of a better word, pretty crappy, are there efforts now to try and sustain or to make water availability over the long term with climate uncertainty? Is that also within the AG province in terms of trying to make things better for California farmers in particular?
We have a nexus with our agriculture industry and the California AG's office in multiple ways. One of the main ways right now is challenging the unlawful tariffs that have been imposed that have been hurting our farms. The governor and I announced the lawsuit at a farm in the Central Valley to make the point about the impact on ag. How water and adequate water and reliable water supply will impact our agriculture industry in the Central Valley and the farmers in the Central Valley is more a matter of policy that the legislature and the governor would weigh in on, maybe with California's direct democracy of proposition, and then we would defend the law if it's challenged in court, or if there's an attempt by the federal administration to undercut states' rights in the process, the position that California has taken. We saw that when we had the wildfires in LA, Trump was holding over our head FEMA disaster relief funding. And that should be nonpartisan, by the way. When there was a disaster in Texas under Biden, when there was disaster in Florida under Biden, he sent the FEMA funding immediately. Those are Americans in need of help. The funding should be sent, no conditions. Send the help. But one of the things that Trump was trying to do was trying to impact and affect our water policy with the coercive force of the funding. So I think he's talking to some people somewhere who have a view on water policy and is trying to impose that on California. That would be something that we would get involved in to if there's an attack on our sovereignty as a state to operate our own water systems and have our own policy. So that's when we would come in, usually to defend a policy or protect against an attack on an existing policy in California.
Salamat
I'm
po.
sorry, sir. I just want to make sure we get on to another question. Thank you. I just want to make sure if we can get one on this side, but I'd like us make sure we have a student. You can self-identify as a student on this side of the room. Thank you. It should be on.
Hello. Okay, yes, awesome. Hi, first of all, thank you for your time. I'm also from Long Beach and Mindanao, so hello akong kaibigan. I guess I wanted to ask you about your current thoughts about the current Marcos regime, because I know you talked about your history there. I also got a history there. But as like Californians, as someone who's so influential as both an economy and also a leader in like climate policy, I guess my question is, what can we do? Like, California has a very strong Filipino diaspora, as you know. Many people have been gathering in front of the consulate in LA because they're upset about many things, one of them being the climate policy in the Philippines with the failed flood control projects. But I guess I wanted to ask about your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And salamat po for the question. I will say I had a lot of concerns around the Duterte administration prior to the current Marcos administration. The human rights abuses, they call them extrajudicial killings. And I mean, these were murders without due process. And so the euphemism was disturbing to me, but that's what they called them. And those human rights abuses I was very concerned about, and very reminiscent of what my mother fought against in the Marcos regime. And then, every son is not their father, so maybe Marcos could be different, current Marcos. But I'm not super hopeful, but I'm open to evidence and interested in it and to see what he does. And I think you haven't seen the same nature and type of human rights abuses that we saw under Duterte. But there are so many challenges in the Philippines. It is hammered regularly by superstorms and natural disasters, and it's had volcano eruptions, and the flood of the infrastructure is just not ready. It's not hardened for what they know is going to come, and so it's sad to see it. And I hope with our influence, with the partnership we have, they're an important ally, of course, of the United States. That maybe we can provide some influence in other critical policy areas in infrastructure, water, energy. There's massive income inequality there as well. The super, super rich and the desperately poor, and not a real middle class or opportunity to live the middle class dream. We have some of that problem here in America too. We need to acknowledge that fact. But I'm hopeful that there can be some improvements through our partnership and our relationship. But it's been sad to see the lack of speed of progress in some of the areas.
Yeah, thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time. I want to give you the last word, maybe some brief words of wisdom you have for those in the audience, particularly who are studying or really just entering the climate field, exploring how they can make a difference. Any good words of wisdom to share there?
Yeah. Well, this shouldn't have to be said, but I'll say it. Continue to be truth seekers, truth tellers, rely on the facts. Follow the science. That'll lead you to good places. It's unfortunate that we have people with the biggest bully pulpits and the biggest megahorns on the planet that are saying the opposite, including yesterday at the UN. And I'm here to tell you climate change is real. The science all says it. You have committed to a profession that acknowledges its existence and its reality, and it needs action. It is screaming for action. Science is screaming for action. Mother Nature is screaming for action. The vulnerable communities that need people like you with your ingenuity and your innovation to take action to protect them, to help them, to lift them up out of the risks to their safety that they are in. Your professions matter. Your work in this space matters. Please be bold. Don't be reckless. I know you won't. Follow the science, but the science will take you to places of urgent action, meaningful action. It's about making people's lives better, tackling our problems. You can't fix problems without facing them. Part of facing a problem is acknowledging its existence and the science behind it. You've done that long ago, but I just want to say thank you. We need all hands on deck. An army of folks who are using the best scientists, science and policy and ingenuity to tackle our problems. I will always bet on American ingenuity and the American people to tackle any problem, even the ones that seem existential, like climate change is. And so, no pressure, but you're on the front lines to solve climate change and take the climate action needed. But I'm grateful for you. I'm proud of you. I'm honored to be with you today, and thank you for all you've done, are doing, and I know what you will do in the future.
Thank you. So thank you, Attorney General Bonta, for your powerful remarks and leadership. Take action is a good message to leave with.